All right, welcome to another episode of A Town Called Pratt. This episode, we are joined by Scott Goodheart and Eric Thimesch, and we're going to talk a little bit about officiating and kind of where things stand and refereeing. And you hear a lot about it these days, and these guys are a couple locals that do it, so we're going to introduce them and kind of get into why we're doing this podcast. So, Scott, why don't we start with you? Get a little background on just your history with officiating and refereeing and go from there.
So I think I started, it seems like 16 years ago, but I've probably been officiating even when I played, just from that style of, having a father who officiated. So I've been around officiating a long time, but I've been officiating basketball for 16 years. Then as I got more comfortable, I took on some more sports. I've done volleyball and done softball. I even help with some football. I'm not registered in football, but help out these guys because there's a shortage of it. But it was just one of those things that, I went as far as I could playing the sport, and I wanted to continue to be involved in the sport, and I just have done officiating. It was a great gig in college, making money doing that, and luckily I've been fortunate enough that every job I've had's allowed the flexibility of me to officiate still. So, there's a huge need. I want to do it as long as I can because, my goal is when my kids are playing, I'm not going to be officiating anymore. I'm going to go watch them. So, again, it's one of those things that I've done it, and I can't get. I'm almost addicted to it. It's almost people, and people are just like, "Why are you addicted to it?" Or what's so great about officiating? I said, it's trying to call a perfect game. There's no such thing as a perfect game, but you get so involved in it. You want to do the best for the kids, and when you hear a coach, a fan, or someone, and you ask them, say, "Well, who worked last night?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I didn't recognize the officials." Like, that's what you want. That's what you want. But the more you do this, they know who you are because you've been around for so long, and they go, "Oh, Thimesch was working, or Goodheart was working." So, just one of those things, I guess.
Thimesch, how about you?
Yeah, just like Scott, I played some sports in high school and wanted to continue it on. I got hooked up with a group here in Pratt that actually needed a fill-in. They had a gentleman getting older towards the end of his career looking to get out, and I kind of fell right into that spot started as a sub, but then fell into officiating football. I've been doing football for, I think, 9 years registered and probably 11 off the books, just helping out when I can or when I could. But like Scott said, it's something about being in the game and helping out, and there's a bond that just keeps bringing you back, and you want to kind of still be a part of that. So it's a cool thing to do, and we are running short, so anything we can do to get more people involved, we're trying.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why you were wanting to do this podcast. You contacted me a month or so ago and said, "Hey, I see you're doing podcasts. I think it would be fun and informal, to educate people on kind of the need for officials and where the kind of state of the industry stands right now, because a lot of people may not be aware that there is quite a bit of shortage, and it's not just from COVID. This was happening before COVID came along in the pandemic, that this was kind of something Kshsaa and really around the nation people were afraid of. I think COVID may have just highlighted it or kickstarted it a little bit. But yeah, talk about a little bit just kind of why you wanted to sit down and have this conversation.
So yeah, this isn't a local issue. There's a shortage of officials here, but this is a nationwide issue. I'm talking Kansas City, California, Bison, Kansas, wherever, small town to big town. There's a shortage of officials. So each year, there's a week dedicated towards and a day actually to wear your official, wear your officiating shirt to work to kind of raise the awareness. So that way, if I see somebody at work and they say, "Hey, why are you wearing your referee shirt?" "Well, I officiate." "Oh, I didn't know that." So then it sparks a conversation,
Definitely.
I really think that officials are the best people to recruit officials, because there's something just about, like Eric mentioned, that bondness. There's a fraternity, a closeness, the group niche with it. So again, I've got friends in Kansas City and they're running the same issues. There's no way they can be running short of officials in Kansas City, but they are. It's just a constant battle.
And I don't know too, like you said, with the COVID, I noticed down here on one of the points, the average age was 50, and I didn't realize that it was that high. And I could see that maybe affecting a little bit more of people getting out, but it's just, I don't know the main cause of everything, but we are running short.
Well, and that's what I saw earlier just here in September, about a month ago. There was a soccer game, Ottawa versus Bonner Springs, was canceled just from lack of officials. I've seen a couple games, they've moved kickoff up to 3 o'clock just so the same crew can almost pull a doubleheader and do a 7 o'clock game, later that evening. That's just how how short it is. Kind of a rundown on some of the stats coming into this year, just to kind of let people know we got them in front of us. Looked like from that 1920 to 2021 season, there was a 14% reduction in officials registering, which totaled to 520 fewer registered officials. And a lot of that might be that COVID, like you said, Eric, you're kind of forced out due to COVID. And then it's that, boy, I don't know how much I want to get back in.
Right.
I've taken, whether it's health reasons or just change of lifestyle, that's now, man, I kind of enjoy going and watching my kids play and instead of that. So yeah, I'm not sure what it is. What are some of the reasons, you guys mentioned why you got into it or why you're still into it, but if you're talking to a high school kid or a sophomore, junior, if their interest is perked a little bit, how are you trying to get them past that, hey, I'm interested, to now they're on the field with you?
Well, I do think that the football group here in Pratt does a really good job of taking those kids and saying, hey, we're going to work a middle school game. And, I think the biggest thing is putting those kids in good situations of having some veteran guys and some mentors on the game that really helps and says, I went and took this kid under my wing, and I think he's someone we can build on. I tell kids to do it too, and they say, well, maybe they didn't like refereeing, but they want to coach. I said, well, that's a great way to learn the rules, to understand what, if you're coaching, what that kid's looking at or what that official's looking at, so you know those rules. But I think that's a lot of things. We get kids started or individuals started and just put them in a bad spot and they don't like it. And, there's got to be some mentorship and leadership with them. You can't just throw them into the wolves and say, okay, go referee. So, but the recreation department's a great way to start to get your feet wet. But I really encourage people. You just got to see plays. You got to see plays. One of the first things I did that I think that was beneficial for me was I attended a basketball camp in the summertime. So I learned a lot of stuff in that weekend, and those go on. These have been going on since, oh my gosh, I think 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And all sports have something similar to that for some summer training. But then they go and they do that, and they learn those things that they're supposed to do properly. So then when they go to the school year, they're doing, things they learned from camp and doing it the proper way. So obviously it's a little bit different lifestyle and the mentality of a MAYB tournament in the summertime versus, a middle school and just that setting of fans watching and parents and, the typical school year basketball. So.
I was going to ask that. Are there any type of mentorship programs that are available through Kshsaa or around, or Big Buddy or Big Brother programs where you team up with an official on an established crew? Or
I'll tell you what helped me get better at it was the soap bowl.
Just scrimmages and things like that.
Everybody that worked football would go down to that, and it was laid back. It was easygoing. Coaches are just wanting to get through their plays, but like Scott said, you get to see the reps. You get to see it in motion, and then you have somebody that's done it before standing beside you saying, okay, this is what you're supposed to look at. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And it helped me deal with, the game because it's fast. And then we're just talking about high school, not college or NFL, but it's fast and things happen. And that old cliche of I didn't see it is a lot of times because they actually didn't see it, And that just really helped me. And it was a lot of the veteran officials would come down, we'd wear shorts, not dressed up, and just say, okay, this is what we need to look at. And that it was a great thing to help.
How long did it take you to get comfortable to be able to tell a coach, I didn't see it? It's one thing to get used to a crowd and, but do you get comfortable enough to have the confidence to say, hey, I didn't see it? We had Holting in here earlier and talked about that a little bit, but or early on, do you just make something up so they know you didn't see it?
No, you don't ever make anything up. It's hard to say to a coach, I missed it, but what I've found over the years is owning up to a mistake is the biggest thing. We're all human. And the thing is like, coach, I truly missed it. I'm going to look for it next time. I'm going to do a better job next time. Like Scott said earlier, calling the perfect game is impossible, but we want to do it because we don't want to mess anything up for them. And that way the game is truly theirs, And so I don't know.
No, I do think, like Eric was talking about, there is that time of when you learn to do things, like it's giving your first technical foul, of the things you're supposed to do, or throwing your first flag, or doing whatever. you get more comfortable with it the more you do it. I remember I was working a varsity game at Lions, probably had no business being there, but they needed officials, so I went and worked it. First call of the game, it's a block, but my hand is closed, which means a foul on the baseline. And just like someone's like, open your hand, going, no, I can't, I've got a foul, because again, I probably wasn't ready to see that, but I it's one of those, you see it, you have to judgment, you call it, you go. So I go to the coach, and he's mad. He goes, what do you have there? I said, well, coach, it's like this. Do you play golf? He goes, yeah. I go, well, that's my mulligan. And so it diffused the situation down, because he was so mad about it. But when I was able to go and just, kind of ease him into it, he just kind of laughed, and we moved on from it. So I do think there comes that comfortability with people that, when you know how to talk to a coach. You have this coach over here that, he's known to be a jerk, so you got to do this or that. Or this coach, he's good, just tell him what you saw. Or if he's barking at you, you better listen to him, because he's probably got a point. So the more you do this, the more you understand kind of who those coaches are. Maybe you talk about it as a crew, or hey, this coach last week, he was out of hand, so you got to get under control from, a commissioner standpoint or a state standpoint or something like that. So
how easy is it to transition from sport to sport? The atmosphere is generally all the same, whether you're doing a soccer game or basketball or football or but do you have to be you said you weren't registered for football, for varsity football. What's the different processes for being eligible or registered to do the different sports? Or are they short enough now that they're calling up anybody and saying, hey, I know you're not registered for football, but we need you. You've done a couple JV games. And
so as long as I feel like you don't want to go into a game without a registered official, like even if it's 8th grade or JV, but you don't have to be registered to do those games. So I wouldn't just throw like a crew together and say, hey, you kids just go do it. I would have a veteran there that obviously knows the rules. Everybody's supposed to know the rules, but I mean, have somebody there to refer to and knowledgeable that could call the game and help keep everything under control. But as far as the middle school and JV, I don't know if that's the same for basketball.
No, so in order to work a varsity contest, you have to be a registered official. Registration means
in that sport, specific to that sport.
Correct. So like I told you about, I wouldn't help these guys with JV and middle school game. You don't have to be registered to work junior varsity or middle school. They encourage it, because when you get registered, you get a rule book. You're required to take a test. You go to a rules meeting. They have other opportunities like area meetings you can go to. So, I mean, these officials we're not just pulling them off the streets, even though there might be times that you might say, does this guy just get pulled off the street or what? They're really not. I mean, they have to go through a bigger process than some states, comparably speaking. So, I mean, but I encourage people to get registered, because I said it's $50, roughly for the first sport, then $25 after that. But you're getting rule books, you're getting knowledge, you're getting, a mentor. Sometimes with the scholarship program, you get a mentor. So if Austin were to get, officiating, and then through the scholarship program, maybe Eric's his mentor the next year for a sport or something. So, I mean, there are a lot of benefits to it of that. So,
what is that scholarship program? Talk about that a little bit more if you can.
So it's something that Kshsaa came out with about, it seems like 5 years, maybe it's 10 years ago now then, but it's kind of a way to encourage people to say, hey, if we have a person over here I think would be a good official, they can register up to 3 sports for no cost. They get a mentor for that, whether it's 3 different sports. It might be me for basketball, Eric for football, and Mike Jones for softball or something. And then that person, they'll talk to him and say, okay, Cody, hey, we've got a basketball rules meeting coming up in Mays on, next Monday, so we need to go, or I'll meet at your house, pick you up, do whatever, but we're going to go to the rules meeting and stuff. So it's just having that person to hold each other accountable and say, hey, don't forget we got a rules meeting, or hey, we got a middle school basketball game together at Medicine Lodge next week, so I'll plan on picking you up. We'll be there by 4 o'clock for a 4:30 tip or something. So it's just having that person that doesn't know the process of what goes on for, a registration year in the school year, just to help them kind of guide them through it for the first year. Because I think I was kind of lost in my first year of officiating, because I didn't get postseason eligible. I didn't go to area rule meetings, and those are where you really learn a lot of stuff, I feel like, is the area meetings, because you have dialogue. Because you learn from a crew out at Dodge City that had a call potentially that, hey, that's going to help your crew down the road type thing. So there are benefits to it, I feel like.
How much is there any type of like continued education or continued learning that once you do get registered that you're required to, renew each year or attend meetings each year, or or 2 years, or what's the process of once you are registered to keeping your your card carrying
Your good
ref?
standing.
Yeah,
You have to do it. So virtually it's every year. But the nice thing is too, there is so much, literature. There's so much videos. There's so much stuff out there, from Huddle to RefQuest to the Federation site. There's a thing called Arbiter.
Yep.
That's where the games come through as a process. But there's a central hub from the NFHS, and they'll talk about different things. Even Kshsaa sends out a newsletter every week about, hey, here's the points of emphasis we're seeing. Whether it's targeting, whether it's illegal blocks, whatever the case is. So I do feel like there's a lot of literature there. It can be overwhelming at times, but there's as much content there as people want. So,
and those meetings that he was talking about, like we have 2 area meetings that we have to attend every year, and then we have a rules meeting every other year that we have to attend. And then that's a great time to go over, like you said, the literature can be overwhelming, and if you got questions, and sometimes the verbiage is so hard to understand because there's so many situations that can happen in sports. So that's a great place for guys that have been in the book and been in years and years of experience to say, you can bounce this off of and say, hey, we had this situation the other night. We didn't know what happened, or we didn't know what to call, but we can't try to come to the best conclusion that we could. And you learn so much more talking about it too, besides being on the field or on the court while it's happening. And then you got, like I said too, you got to re-register every year, and you got to take that test.
and the other thing I didn't mention either, in order to be in good standing, you have to get a 90% or higher on the open book exam of your respected sport. So So you get registered, you pay your money, you go to your rules meeting, you have to get a 90% or higher on the open book test, and then those are the 3 requirements, minimum 3 requirements to be registered. And then if you want to work postseason, which is your playoffs and that, you have to attend either a clinic like in basketball or volleyball. They have clinics too, and then 2 area meetings. Or if you go to a clinic and 1 area meeting covers it. So, you think about it, there are some hoops to jump through, but I really feel they're beneficial and educational.
Yeah. Is there checks and balance systems for officiating? And you mentioned Arbiter. I'm not real familiar with that, but I don't know if it's what I think it is, but is there a way for you guys to grade yourself? So when you get done with a football game, do you guys go back and watch film almost to grade your own crew, or if an official or if a coach has a complaint, who does he say, hey, this needs to be sent off to the state, and then do you have a chance to rebuttal that? And
yes.
How does that process work, or is there a process out there for that?
Just go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say Huddle has been the biggest advantage for football. Everybody seems to be watching film, and we make the request because we meet the ADs and the head coaches before our games, and just make the request, hey, our email is on our card. Please send us the whole game if you want, or, plays that you felt like
a little more clarification on, or hey, what did you see here?
And then if it gets way out of control, obviously they're going to email the state and say, hey, this was missed, and then they'll contact us. But we always get a copy of the email and the film just to go over what what they thought and what we thought. But yeah, Huddle has been huge for us.
Do officials have free access to Huddle?
We don't. Through the GWOA membership, which is a Greater Western
Officials
Association out of Wichita, you can join that, and it's a $25 membership fee, and that gives you an automatic access to
Gives
Huddle.
you Huddle access. So,
Do you guys have the same thing for basketball?
No, I don't think. Well, yeah, basketball has the same thing as GWOA.
No, I meant just for like film and stuff, because I didn't know that.
Football is just different, because you can go and watch different clips, and you can with basketball too.
Yeah.
But I feel like football is more of a one that they watch clips on, but basketball, there's a lot of those too on a block charge or something they want to see again. So, and now anymore, everything's being streamed. We can easily go back and pick it up too if we can't find it on Huddle. So
that's like a lot of it's on YouTube. I think everybody's starting to post all their games on YouTube now.
Yeah. Which could be good or bad, I guess, depending on why you're wanting to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
But it's good. Like Eric talked about, touching base on that is, I also serve as a commissioner, so I'm in charge of hiring officials for the Heart of the Plains League. So let's say if there was a game that happened out at Skyline that they weren't happy about or something, I would say, hey, send me the film and we can look at it or break it down or do whatever. So there are checks and balances like you talked about of saying, well, hey, this guy was pretty good. I didn't care for this guy. If you do this long enough, you're going to build some of those grudges, or people aren't going to like you or something. It's it's the nature of it. We are competitive people. We have that nature mindset of whatever. You might have a referee guy you remember from high school. You're like, that guy was just terrible. We all have those people. I mean, I guess to the extent you could think that referees are considered the cops because we're the guys that are trying to, do the rules. I hate to compare us to cops because I think they're some really respected people, but at the same time, it's that mindset that people get and say, wow, these guys are just cops. So,
Yeah.
but
Now, we haven't touched on it yet. And whenever you talk about officials and official shortage, one of the things you always hear people point to is the youth sports and the behavior that you so commonly see in the crowds and on YouTube and all over the internet. And some of those are probably outliers and don't happen as often as, we think they do because we see them so much. But that is a big issue. How do you get a 16-year-old kid or a 12-year-old kid to go out and do a 10U game at Green Sports Complex and just get belittled and berated and then expect him to be excited to pursue that career? How do you see that issue? How do you address that? And is it as bad as it seems?
I feel parents just need to just cool it, all right? There's no soccer scholarships being handed out at any, football, none of these scholarships. Let the kids play, enjoy, learn the game, the fundamentals, and stay out of, just cheer for them, You have this volunteer coach room, let them coach.
Yeah.
But don't sit there and belittle the referee because guess what? He's learned the game just like your kid is or she is. So, I mean, that's just so frustrating. And I really hope that, we as people can call out somebody. If it's our friend over here who's being a jackwagon about it, say, hey, leave the guy alone. He's trying,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what's so frustrating about it to me. Because how am I supposed to then try to recruit these kids to be officials? Say, well, I had a bad experience as a 16-year-old at a soccer youth tournament. I mean,
how do you get them back in it when they've been ruined?
Absolutely.
The first time they went out and tried it.
Right. I mean, that to me is just.
In volleyball, and I was talking with somebody about this earlier this week, telling them we were going to do a podcast, and we just got to talking about youth sports and a solution, and ever since my daughter started playing club volleyball, they've got to get registered. They got to do all the kids do, and the kids, referee the games. So if it's and that's club volleyball, that's not school sports or whatnot. But if they're down here playing at the Blythe and Pratt's sitting the game, it's they play a 9 o'clock game, they're reffing the 10 o'clock game, and then they sit the noon game. But during that 10 o'clock game, the kids are the line judges, the kids are the bookkeepers, and the coach for the team is whatever you call up there in the bird's nest or the main coach. Yeah. But so those kids all are learning the rules. And I've never heard a parent yell at one of the kids, because it's their kids out there, or it's, it's somebody else's kids. Could something like that be implemented in other sports where, you've got a down game at, a soccer match and two of your kids are out there shadowing the officials? I think people would be a lot less likely to start yelling at official knowing that he's kind of got a couple little guys shadowing him. I don't know if you could implement that or not. I just want
to make the parents do it. Like, do I come into your work and come yell at you?
Right.
It's just, that's one of the frustrating things to me. But
when we had Pee Wee football, if I had some young kids, like I think Zach was sophomore, maybe a freshman when he started, and even he got his younger brother, because it was younger youth football, and we were getting kids started into officiating. And I think it goes back to you got to have at least one veteran member on the crew that's been there, and then they have to kind of try to defend if something goes wrong with a parent, because that parent needs to be removed or that situation needs to be gone. And
that's the thing is, you've got to have that. I agree. Like I was saying with volleyball, you've got the two kids doing the lines, but you've also got the coach of that team as the main official for that game. So if there is a play and call, whether it's baseball or football, you don't have two 12-year-olds out there trying to stand up to a 35-year-old dad, coaching his football team. I don't know if it's something you could implement in other sports or not. But I think what you said, just the main message of, man, be respectful to just the kids and even if they're not kids out there, the people out there doing their job.
Right. They're giving up their time to do this. Yes, they're getting compensated for it. Is it enough? Probably not. But at the same time, they're giving up time to be away from their family to do something they enjoy just because your kids can play, And I think you see some of that stuff, and some of these people get so out of hand. I mean, you can make them a YouTube sensation or whatever, but that's not going to probably quit it.
Yeah, shaming them on the internet.
You can
doesn't-
kick them out of a baseball tournament, not refund them, but they'll just be somewhere
they're
else
gonna
the next
keep doing.
week.
They're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, so I mean,
and it's a bad example that they're setting. Just for everybody, even for their kid.
Right.
Their kid that's playing in there now. He's going to go in and like, hey, I can argue that call next time. Because that's what their dad's doing for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, and then what's that kid going to be like then?
Yeah.
Is that going to be the same kid? So what are we creating?
Right.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
it sounds like just accountability.
It really
is the solution there. So kind of back to the shortage and things like that. Do you see where do you see it going in the next school year or two? We've seen, like I said, we've seen some games canceled already this season. Do you see it affecting schedules for the rest of this 21-22 season? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Are we
Yes.
at that point
Yes.
where it's that crucial?
We're losing more than we're gaining it doesn't show that we're gaining. We're trying to recruit as many as we can, but we are definitely losing more at a faster rate than we're gaining.
And one of these things too, like you mentioned about playing an earlier time for soccer, which is, I didn't know that about Eastern Kansas because, like you said, you wouldn't think that's an issue there. But I mean, they've been doing this for a while in Western Kansas. They'll play a 3:00 football game, and then 14 miles down the road, 7, and that same crew that worked at 3 is working at 7. So
and that might have been what that article was referencing. I don't know if it was specific to soccer.
But you think about it too. I mean, there's 9 classifications in football next year,
Right.
and I'm looking at scheduling on there. I've got 8 games I've got to cover officials for in 1 week. Going, I don't know where I'm going to get them all. I hope there's some guys that'll help out, but it's a constant uphill battle. And I mean, I don't think you could pay them all the money in the world. It's not going to get people out from doing it all the time. People are, their jobs right now are essential workers almost virtually because jobs are precious, and it's scary to think about. It really is.
I think you're going to see more varsity games played on Saturday
or Thursdays
or Thursday, or
changing them around.
Right.
Yeah, well, and just even a Saturday schedule, is there much competition do a lot of high school officials also do college sports also? Are you competing with colleges when you're trying to
I think there's
staff
more and
games?
more on it for sure. Zach Shanline's a prime example. If he'll be somewhere with these guys on a Friday and he's hitting the roads early on Saturday. So, and then you look at it too, like college basketball starting in October.
Right.
So preseason wise, and then football season going in November. So you have some guys that do dual sports that it's not gonna work for them. So because they're probably working that football as late as they can in the playoffs if they're pretty good, and then they're just picking up whenever. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
With you working college on basketball, isn't it you could pretty much get a game every night of the week with college and high school?
Yeah, you could.
And JV.
Maybe a JV game on a Monday, high school varsity, or even a game on a Tuesday.
Right.
KCAC and Jayhawk play on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I mean, yeah, so you could work 6 out of 7 nights.
It's busy.
So the work's out there. We just got to find people to do it. That
gotta
sounds
find
like the
people
case
willing.
with about every
Everything, right.
aspect
Well,
in
yeah,
industry
that's
across the
definitely
country.
right. Definitely
so,
right.
well, guys, I don't have a whole lot more. For anybody wanting to get into it, you talked about the scholarship program. You had some brochures with you that you brought with you today. Are there any job fairs or anything like that out there locally that, that the rec department here does, or anybody interested that, usually, probably 1 million people will see this podcast and be like,
absolutely, it's gonna blow
wow,
up.
where are we going to sign up at?
Well, one of the things Eric mentioned, GWOA, that's a great resource in our area. Another one that's trying to grow is the KSOA, that's Kansas Sports Officials Association. They're based out of Kansas City, but they're trying to make it a statewide program. Obviously, the Kansas State High School Activities Association is a great resource. Their brochures are usually going to be at every rec department, college. I usually carry them with me when I go officiate. So if I find a line judge or somebody that's good, hey, you should consider, registering to officiate because it's beneficial. Reality U was a big thing that came to Pratt High, and I was able to work with that guy to say, hey, you need to spark the interest to show these kids how much money they can make. I go, I hate to dangle that carrot of money, but sometimes that's going to catch your eye more than anything. So that's been good. The go days with Pratt, I think my dad's come down to do that before. I think he's going to Nickerson to present. I mean, all of us need to be advocates for it.
And
officials especially.
And most people know somebody who's an official,
Yeah.
and most officials are going to be able to point you in the right direction.
Well, contact your AD because they're usually
Or
the high
coaches,
school AD,
your local,
coaches.
any coaches.
Yeah. The biggest thing they talked about targeting, like we talked, was young kids, but even an empty nester. You think about an empty nester person, their kids are off to college. What am I going to do now? Consider officiating.
Yep.
Can't move very well, you could probably do volleyball. Think about it in softball, you don't have to move a lot, but you know the game. I mean, so there are those sports that are, soccer is probably not going to be for you if you're not very mobile because there's a lot of running in that. So,
And you can probably set your own schedule a little bit, can't you? I mean,
you're
you can.
an independent contractor, so you can pick and choose and say, well, I can't go this night. I've got my wife's anniversary. You should go do your wife's anniversary. Your kid's birthday, you should go do that. So, yeah, there's opportunities out there. Just contact us some way to reach out, and we'll be happy to give you information.
All right. Well, we'll post a lot of those links on the video here. So if you're watching and want to get to any of those websites, I'll get them from Scott and we'll post them below. I don't got anything else for you guys. I appreciate you both coming in and kind of highlighting an issue that maybe a lot of people didn't know was an issue. So always good to sit down and chat about it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, guys. That'll do it.